Ladies and gentlemen, Queen Elizabeth I was one of the most influential and enduring monarchs in English history. Born in 1533, she ascended to the throne in 1558 at the age of 25, following the death of her half-sister, Mary I. Her reign lasted an impressive 44 years, a period often referred to as the Elizabethan age, a time marked by remarkable achievements in the arts, the flourishing of English drama through playwrights like William Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe, as well as advancements in exploration and the strengthening of England as a global power. Throughout her reign, Elizabeth managed to maintain relative peace and stability in a nation fraught with religious conflict and political intrigue. She skillfully balanced opposing factions and never married, earning her the title the Virgin Queen. Her leadership style, charisma, and intelligence helped shape the identity of the English monarchy and left an enduring legacy. By the turn of the 17th century, however, the Queen's health began to deteriorate. Historical accounts from the time describe her as melancholic, withdrawn, and physically weakened. She experienced a noticeable loss of appetite, suffered from insomnia, and grew increasingly isolated. Despite the signs, her exact medical condition was never clearly documented. When she died on March 24, 1603, at the age of 69, physicians at the time attributed her passing to natural causes, a vague term often used in eras lacking advanced diagnostic tools. In the absence of modern medical understanding, any illness that did not involve a dramatic accident or outbreak was typically labeled this way, leaving room for much historical speculation about what may have truly ended the life of such a monumental figure. In the Elizabethan era, pale skin was not only a beauty ideal, but also a powerful social symbol. A pale complexion signified wealth, nobility, and a life of leisure, far removed from the tan skin of laborers who toiled outdoors. For Queen Elizabeth I, maintaining an image of divine, untouchable purity was essential to reinforcing her authority as a monarch and the Virgin Queen. Her ghostly white face became one of her most recognized features, almost as iconic as her fiery red hair. To achieve this look, Elizabeth, like many noble women of her time, relied on a cosmetic mixture known as Venetian Ceruse, widely regarded as the finest skin whitener available in Europe. This makeup was imported from Venice, a major center of trade and beauty culture, and was highly coveted. Venetian Ceruse was made by mixing white lead carbonate, with vinegar and other ingredients to form a smooth paste. Once applied to the skin, it created an opaque, porcelain-like finish that concealed blemishes, scars, and signs of aging. However, what users at the time did not know was that white lead is a highly toxic substance. Repeated application allowed it to seep into the skin and bloodstream, accumulating in the body over time. The compound could damage tissues, affect the nervous system, and impair organ function. Even worse, lead doesn't easily leave the body, meaning each new layer of ceruse brought users one step closer to long-term poisoning. Elizabeth used this makeup extensively, especially after she contracted smallpox in 1562, which left her face with permanent scars. Venetian ceruse became not just a cosmetic choice, but a tool for masking the physical toll of illness and aging, preserving her carefully crafted public image. Unfortunately, this pursuit of perfection may have had deadly consequences hidden beneath the surface of her flawless facade. Lead poisoning, especially from long-term exposure, is now known to cause a wide range of debilitating symptoms that affect both the body and mind. In Queen Elizabeth I's case, the cumulative use of lead-based cosmetics over decades would have significantly increased her risk of developing chronic lead toxicity, a condition medical science only began to understand centuries later. One of the earliest and most common signs of lead poisoning is fatigue, a constant, unshakable tiredness that no amount of rest can truly alleviate. Historical reports from Elizabeth's later years describe her as increasingly weary and withdrawn. She often stood for hours without speaking, and she appeared emotionally and physically drained, a dramatic contrast to the dynamic and commanding figure she had been in her youth. Memory loss is another key symptom of chronic lead exposure. Elizabeth, once famed for her sharp intellect and quick wit, began to show signs of mental decline toward the end of her life. She reportedly became forgetful and struggled to engage in political discussions with the same clarity she once commanded. Her counselors noted changes in her behavior, including confusion, indecisiveness, and even periods of silence that may have indicated cognitive deterioration. Perhaps most visibly, lead poisoning can cause skin problems, including discoloration, irritation, and eventually scarring. Ironically, the very product Elizabeth used to conceal her smallpox scars may have worsened the appearance of her skin over time. Venetian ceruse, with its corrosive ingredients, would have dried out and damaged her skin, leading to the need for even more makeup to cover the worsening condition. This created a vicious cycle. The more damage her skin endured, the more heavily she applied the toxic ceruse, accelerating the internal harm. These symptoms, lethargy, forgetfulness, and physical decline, match closely with the descriptions of Queen Elizabeth I's final years. Though no autopsy was performed, and the term lead poisoning didn't exist in the 17th century, modern medical hindsight suggests a strong correlation between the effects of lead and the Queen's mysterious, gradual deterioration. Queen Elizabeth I's reliance on Venetian ceruse went far beyond vanity. It became a necessary tool for maintaining the royal image she had carefully constructed over decades. But as the years passed, the very makeup she used to enhance her beauty began to betray her. The corrosive nature of the lead-based ceruse caused her skin to deteriorate. It became dry, irritated, and discolored, often cracking or peeling beneath the layers of powder. Instead of stopping, however, Elizabeth responded by applying even more of the substance, attempting to mask the growing damage. This practice created a tragic and self-perpetuating cycle. The more her skin suffered from the poison, the more she felt compelled to cover it, and the more she covered it, the worse the damage became. For a monarch whose public image was tightly bound to notions of divine beauty, grace, and invulnerability, revealing imperfections, especially facial scarring, was unthinkable. After surviving smallpox in her late 20s, Elizabeth bore pitted scars on her face, which further reinforced her dependence on heavy cosmetics. Over time, her natural features faded beneath thick layers of paste, rouge, and powder, creating a mask that both protected and imprisoned her. Contemporaries noted that in her final years, she became increasingly reluctant to be seen without her makeup or wigs. She reportedly refused to have mirrors in her presence, unable to face her own reflection. This psychological toll added another layer of suffering to her physical decline. Elizabeth's obsessive application of ceruse was not merely about aesthetics. It was about identity, power, and control in a world where a queen's appearance could not betray weakness or age. Thus, her continued use of toxic makeup, even as it visibly damaged her skin and potentially hastened her death, illustrates a deeply human vulnerability. In her struggle to preserve the image of an eternal, untouchable monarch, Elizabeth became trapped by the very standards she helped create. One of the most dangerous aspects of lead poisoning is its insidious nature. It does not strike suddenly like a virus or a wound, but instead builds silently over time, embedding itself into the body's tissues and organs. In the case of Queen Elizabeth I, her daily use of lead-based makeup over many years would have gradually allowed the toxin to accumulate in her bloodstream, bones, and vital organs, with devastating consequences. Lead is known to interfere with a wide range of biological systems. One of its most harmful effects is on the immune system, which it can suppress by damaging the production and function of white blood cells, the body's main defense against infection. If Elizabeth's immune system had been compromised by years of chronic exposure, she would have become more vulnerable to illnesses that she might have otherwise been able to fight off. This vulnerability could help explain the decline in her health during her final years, including her increased susceptibility to fatigue, infections, and overall frailty. Furthermore, lead can cause systemic organ damage, especially to the kidneys, liver, heart, and brain. These organs work tirelessly to filter toxins, regulate body systems, and maintain equilibrium, but under the strain of persistent lead intake, they begin to falter. Lead interferes with the kidney's ability to filter waste, potentially causing long-term kidney disease or failure. The liver, essential for metabolizing substances and detoxifying the blood, may become overburdened and inflamed. Cardiovascular effects, such as increased blood pressure and damage to arterial walls, are also well documented in chronic lead exposure, increasing the risk of stroke or heart failure, conditions which may have contributed silently to Elizabeth's physical decline. Perhaps most alarmingly, lead is a neurotoxin, meaning it can impair the central nervous system and brain function over time. Chronic exposure has been linked to mood disorders, irritability, depression, confusion, and cognitive impairment, all symptoms that were reportedly observed in Elizabeth during her final years. She became withdrawn, indecisive, and at times appeared to suffer from episodes of melancholy or deep psychological distress. This neurological deterioration could easily be attributed, at least in part, to the effects of long-term lead poisoning. In an age with limited medical understanding and virtually no diagnostic tools to detect such internal damage, Elizabeth's deteriorating condition would have appeared mysterious and tragic. Yet today, with the knowledge of how heavy metals like lead affect the human body, it is increasingly plausible that her health was being systematically undermined by the very cosmetics she trusted and depended on. In the 16th and early 17th centuries, the field of medicine was still in its infancy by modern standards. The human body was poorly understood, and the causes of disease were often attributed to supernatural forces, imbalances in the four bodily humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, or divine punishment. Germ theory, hygiene standards, and toxicology, the study of how poisons affect the body, were all centuries away from development. In this context, substances like lead, mercury, and arsenic were frequently used in cosmetics and even medical treatments without awareness of their long-term consequences. Lead, in particular, was widely used because of its aesthetic appeal and versatility. It was prized for its smooth, bright white color, which could create the pale, luminous skin tone that symbolized nobility and high status. It applied well, covered imperfections, and gave the appearance of youthful skin, qualities highly valued in a culture that closely linked beauty to virtue, status, and, in the case of royalty, divine right. There was little to no recognition that this substance could be dangerous. In fact, Venetian Ceruse, the lead-based cosmetic used by Queen Elizabeth I, was so highly regarded that it was officially endorsed and sold by reputable apothecaries. Even among the most educated physicians of the time, there was minimal understanding of chronic poisoning. If someone became ill slowly, over many months or years, the symptoms might be blamed on aging, melancholy, spiritual imbalance, or even astrology. Since lead poisoning can mimic a wide range of illnesses, fatigue, digestive problems, headaches, confusion, it rarely drew suspicion as a single root cause. Furthermore, no tests existed to identify toxins in the body, and autopsies were rare, especially for royalty, whose bodies were often handled with strict ceremony and secrecy after death. Queen Elizabeth I, surrounded by some of the finest minds and advisors of her age, would have had no reason to believe her trusted cosmetics were harming her. The advice she received, even from court physicians, would have reflected the era's limitations. It's possible that any physical or psychological symptoms she experienced were seen as the natural result of aging or the emotional burden of ruling a nation, rather than the cumulative impact of a slow, invisible poison being applied to her skin every day. This lack of scientific awareness tragically highlights how even the most powerful individuals were not immune to the consequences of misinformation and medical ignorance. In a time when appearance was everything and scientific insight was scarce, the very tools used to maintain royal prestige may have unknowingly contributed to the Queen's physical downfall. Queen Elizabeth I's life and death serve as a haunting reminder of how deeply rooted societal expectations, especially around beauty, can shape personal choices, influence public perception, and even endanger lives. As a monarch, Elizabeth was not just a political leader. She was a carefully crafted symbol of power, purity, and perfection. Her appearance was an extension of her authority, and in a patriarchal society where female rulers were rare and often scrutinized, maintaining an impeccable, almost mythical image became essential to her reign. The pale, flawless face Elizabeth presented to the world was not just fashion, it was armor. It projected strength, elegance, and control in an era when women were often viewed as weak or unfit to rule. However, this pursuit of an idealized image was not without its costs. To uphold that royal standard of beauty, Elizabeth routinely used makeup laced with toxic white lead, unaware that it was quietly compromising her health with every application. This tragic intersection of beauty and ignorance is not unique to Elizabeth's time. Throughout history, and even today, people have gone to dangerous lengths to meet impossible or harmful aesthetic standards, whether through unregulated cosmetic treatments, extreme dieting, or invasive surgeries. In Elizabeth's case, the pressure to maintain a youthful, untouchable appearance as she aged was immense. Her use of lead-based cosmetics, though praised and admired at the time, serves as a stark example of how societal expectations can lead individuals to unknowingly harm themselves in the name of conformity and status. What makes Elizabeth's story especially poignant is the irony of her position. As one of the most powerful women in the world, surrounded by advisors, physicians, and scholars, she still fell victim to the same pressures and misinformation as countless others of her era. Her reliance on Venetian Ceruse and her refusal to be seen without makeup in her later years reveal a deeper vulnerability behind the royal facade. A woman who, despite commanding an empire, was ultimately not immune to the silent dangers lurking behind beauty rituals and widely accepted norms. This convergence of cultural ideals, scientific ignorance, and personal vulnerability encapsulates the hidden cost of image and the profound human toll of societal expectations. Elizabeth's death, seen through the lens of modern knowledge, becomes not just a historical event, but a powerful commentary on the invisible forces that can shape, even shorten, our lives. In reflecting on the life and death of Queen Elizabeth I, we are reminded of the fragile balance between power, appearance, and the hidden dangers of societal norms. Her reign, marked by political triumphs and cultural achievements, was overshadowed in the end by a seemingly innocent pursuit of beauty that unknowingly led to her downfall. While she was lauded as a symbol of strength and grace, the price of maintaining that image was more than she, or anyone else, could have anticipated. Elizabeth's story is a cautionary tale, one that teaches us not only about the dangers of toxic substances, but also about the societal pressures that can push individuals, even those with the highest power, to make choices with devastating consequences. It calls for a deeper understanding of the relationship between beauty and health, and a reminder that we must always question the cost of conforming to idealized standards. As we look back at the life of this extraordinary queen, we can't help but reflect on how the legacy of her reign can continue to inspire us. but also challenge us to examine the ways in which we treat beauty, power, and health in our own world. Let us not forget that even the most iconic figures in history are not immune to the hidden risks of the world they inhabit.